Uber once wrote software whose only job was showing police officers a fake version of the app ghost cars, drifting through a city that didn't exist so inspectors could never catch a real driver. That's not a growth hack. That's a company building technology to defeat law enforcement, on purpose, at scale. And it worked. It built the most valuable startup on the planet. Here's the burning question. If breaking the rules faster than anyone can enforce them is the whole strategy, what finally stops a company like that? By the end of this video, you'll see the answer. And it isn't the police. It's a word blog post. But first, the idea. Because the idea was one of the best of the century. Paris, December 2008. Two founders are stuck in the snow after a tech conference, and they cannot get a cab. Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp start riffing on a fantasy. Press a button on your phone, a black car appears. That's it. That's the whole idea. In 2008, taxis were a government-protected cartel in most cities in New York. The medallion that let you drive one cost more than $1 million. Finding a cab in the rain was a lottery. The customer experience hadn't improved in 50 years because it didn't have to. Uber Cab launches in San Francisco in 2010. A handful of drivers, a simple app. And the first time you used it, it felt like the future had arrived early, the little car crawling across your screen toward you. People didn't recommend Uber. They demonstrated it, phone in hand, like a magic trick. That product deserved to win. Hold on to that, because everything that follows is the story of what winning cost. The first fight came fast. San Francisco's transportation agency sent a cease and desist in 2010. You're running a taxi company without taxi licenses. And here, Kalanick made the decision that became Uber's constitution. He didn't stop. He dropped cab from the name and kept operating openly, illegally, daring the city to shut down something voters already loved. The fine never came. Lesson learned. And it's the same lesson a Harvard sophomore learned in 2004. Speed beats permission. If you move fast enough, the consequences arrive after you've already won. So Uber turned that lesson into a machine. City by city, hundreds of them. The playbook ran the same. Launch illegally, grow faster than the government can respond, then mobilize your own riders as a political army when regulators push back. Riders got emails. Your mayor is trying to kill Uber. Tap here to protest. It worked almost everywhere. By 2013, Uber was in dozens of cities and valued at $3.5 billion. By 2015, billion. Faster than Facebook got there. The medallion cartel that took a century to build was dismantled in 5 years by a phone app. And look, part of you is cheering. The cartel was real. The product was better. That's what makes this story dangerous, because inside Uber, we're right about taxis, mutated into we're right about everything. The culture had 14 written values, and they read like a locker room wall. Always be hustlin', toe-stepping, principled confrontation. Kalanick joked in a magazine interview about his newfound desirability. He called the company Boober. At a party, employees showed off Godview, a live map of real riders' locations used as entertainment. A senior executive floated digging up dirt on a critical journalist. Individually, anecdotes. Together, a company that had decided rules were for the losers who didn't build the app. But, and here's where it gets darker, the machine needed to hide from the law it was breaking. So around 2014, engineers built Greyball, officially a fraud prevention tool. In practice, if Uber's system suspected you were a code inspector, your credit card was tied to a police credit union, you opened the app near a government building, you were seen at enforcement stings. Uber served you a fake app, ghost cars, rides that never came. In Portland, inspectors literally stood on street corners watching phantom Ubers drift past them like a mirage. Software, purpose-built to make law enforcement chase ghosts. Remember Greyball. Because in 2017, everything Uber buried came up at once, and the year opens with 3 punches in 8 weeks. January 2017. During protests at JFK Airport, the taxi union strikes in solidarity, and Uber keeps operating, looking like a strikebreaker. Number delete Uber trends. Roughly 500,000 accounts vanish in days. For the first time, the rider army defects. February 2017. Punch 2, the big one. A 25-year-old engineer named Susan Fowler, who had left Uber, publishes a blog post reflecting on one very, very strange year at Uber. 3,000 calm, precise, screenshot-backed words. Her manager propositioned her on day 1. HR protected him because he was a high performer. The pattern repeated and repeated, and management closed ranks every time. No lawsuit could have done what that post did because every woman in tech recognized it, and every reporter finally had the thread. Uber was forced to hire former Attorney General Eric Holder to investigate its own culture. Weeks later, Punch 3. Google's self-driving company Waymo sues Uber, alleging its star hire Anthony Lewandowski downloaded 14,000 confidential files before defecting. The company that stole a market now stood accused of stealing the future, a case. Uber eventually paid about $245 million in equity to settle. And in between, the NYT exposes Greyball and a dashcam video leaks. Kalanick in the back of an Uber berating his own driver who dared complain about falling pay. Some people don't like to take responsibility. The founder caught on camera running the culture on a human being. Now watch what actually kills him. It wasn't the police Greyball brought an inquiry, not a takedown. It wasn't the lawsuits. It was the valuation. By June 2017, the scandals were making Uber uninvestable, and the board needed the next funding round more than it needed its founder. 5 major investors, led by Benchmark, the firm that had backed him from the start, delivered a letter demanding his resignation. They did it while Kalanick was grieving. His mother had died in a boating accident weeks earlier. He resigned that night. The man who taught Silicon Valley that speed beats permission was removed at speed, without permission. His own playbook executed flawlessly against him. And the empire he left? It's in your pocket right now. Uber operates in some 70 countries. Uber became a verb, an adjective, an economy. The 2019 IPO valued at around $75 billion, huge, and still below the hype, because the market finally priced in what insiders always knew. The growth was subsidized, every cheap ride paid for by venture capital, and the drivers, the people, the whole machine stands on, were squeezed from both sides the entire time. Kalanick sold his shares for about $2.5 billion and walked away a billionaire. The consequences, as always, arrived after he'd already won. So, tally the score. The idea, genuinely great. The cartel it broke, genuinely bad. And the lesson every founder after him actually learned. Law-breaking isn't disqualifying, it's a cost curve. Kalanick's real innovation wasn't the app. It was proving you could industrialize, ask forgiveness, not permission, and get rich even after being caught. Next week, that lesson reaches its final form. A founder who didn't evade the regulators he charmed them, testified to Congress as crypto's responsible adult, donated to both parties, while $8 billion of customer money quietly flowed out a back door only he controlled. Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. Subscribe because the Playbook's last chapter is the one where the mask is a moral philosophy.